Wherever there's a relationship, there's a potential for conflict, whether it's between peers, parents, children, spouses, wherever there is communication, there are communication difficulties. Whether you're a therapist, a coach, a parent, a teacher, whatever your role is, you can get more expertise. I bring 35 years of experience as an internal family systems therapist. I'm a mediator, an attorney. I'm also a Chopra Certified Teacher of Meditation, Yoga, and Ayurveda. I bring emotional and spiritual healing along with legal and financial information and support. But my first goal is to teach people how to compassionately communicate, how to communicate from what I'm calling their best and highest self. If you're an IFS practitioner or you know anything about IFS, we talk about having a healthy self, capital S self. And when we're, quote, in self, we are calm, clear, and compassionate. You know those moments? They're usually just moments. We don't walk around in our higher self. We walk around in parts that get triggered by other people. To be an expert, first of all, you have to do your own work for your own personal and spiritual growth. You have to notice how you get triggered by people in your life. And you learn these skills for yourself to become a relationship expert in your own life. And then you take what I'm offering and translate it into your family, into the community, into your own workshops, into your own practice, into the world. I do have a certification, and I'd love to talk to you about the certification, but that's not what this is about. Write down lindakroll.com/certify. And if you'd like, sign up for a 15-minute chat with me just to get more information about you personally and to let you know how these skills that I offer could integrate into your practice, into your future, into your reason for being, and use what I've learned any way you'd like. You can go to lindakroll.com/roadmap and get the overview of my process. And go to lindakroll.com/CCC and you'll get my care kit, which has the guided meditation that I do in all of my first sessions. I've done 6 cohorts of my training. I've worked with thousands of individuals and couples and families. I've trained other therapists. I wrote the book, Compassionate Mediation, How to Add Passion to Your Marriage or Compassion to Your Divorce. How do we listen from our best self? How do we let go of those limiting beliefs and judgments that we've taken on about ourselves and others, which usually come from our family of origin and past experiences? How do we unburden pain from the past and relate from our heart? I start every first session, every workshop, every group, every talk by introducing this to the people I'm speaking with. So let's take about 15 minutes and see if your experience of what I'm offering is something you want to learn more about. Let's say you came to my office with something you want to heal. And because I'm a therapist, mediator, and attorney, people come for different reasons. They come as individuals, they come as couples. Sometimes when they come as couples, they have 2 agendas. One wants to make the relationship better, the other one wants to leave. So holding space for compassionate communication with empathy is what I teach them in the first session. And here's how it goes. Ready? Good. They show up on Zoom. Everything's on Zoom. So I meet them on Zoom and I basically say, how can I help? What are you looking to change? Now, if I'm working with couples, I'll talk to them briefly for a couple minutes, and then I will separate them, even in the Zoom session, put them in different rooms and interview them separately. And my interview is the basis for the relationship transformation because it gives me a framework for looking at where they are and how I can intervene and help them. Now, if you come to see me or your clients come to see you, usually what happens is you want to tell me a story. They want to tell you a story because they figure if they just tell you everything about the last 10 years, you'll side with them and solve the problem. I'll listen to somebody tell me their story for 2 to 5 minutes. And then I will very gently say, I know there's a lot you want to share with me, but I have some questions that will help me help you. If you just tell me your story for 45 minutes, you're going to walk out of here feeling marginally better, but it won't really make a difference. So if it's okay, I'm going to ask you some questions, and then I'm going to give you a new perspective, if that would be helpful. Gently, I lean them in the direction of these questions. I ask them, what's the problem? Or with whom are you having conflict? And they will tell me, and I'll be taking notes. And in my training, I give you all the notes, the details, the scripts, et cetera. But again, that's for another discussion. But what I ask them is, what's the problem? And they'll tell me who the problem was with. So let's say it's with your daughter, and your daughter is acting a certain way. And I will say, what does she do that bothers you? And you will tell me that she's withholding or she's judgmental or something. I will ask, what do you do in response? I get angry, I get hurt, I lecture her. And how are you feeling? How are you thinking? How is this affecting you? And then I will ask, if I talk to your daughter, what would she tell me about you? That you're controlling, that you're a victim, that you're judgmental. What will she tell me about you? And then how does she act? What does she do? And I'm listening for parts, because in internal family system, we have different parts. And I'll explain it to my clients, and I'll show you how I explain it to my clients. I'm taking notes, and I'm looking at behaviors and feelings and thoughts. And then I ask them, could you tell me a little bit about your family of origin? I make a little genogram on my notes. What was your mother like? What was your father like? Where were you in the sibling hierarchy? Were there any family secrets, any addiction, any mental illness, any affairs? Because I'm listening for what was the milieu in which they grew up. And then I will ask them to talk to me about their other party's family of origin. What was their experience like? Because when they look at the other party's perspective, they can sometimes have more empathy for why the other party feels the way they do. This is especially good in couples counseling, because when, let's say, a wife is describing her husband's family of origin to me, and she tells me about his alcoholic father, and he was the oldest of the kids, and his mother was absent. And I'm thinking, no wonder he can't show her the emotional empathy that she'd like, because he never learned it. And as she's repeating this to me, she's getting some expertise about how she can intervene in a way that would be helpful to this couple. And then I will ask, if they had a magic wand, what would they like to see happen? So sometimes with family results, you'd like to see the other person change, which is not possible to change them. They can change, but you can't change them. You can change your reaction to them. And I'll talk about my spiritual graft in a minute to do that. But in a relationship, usually they want to change the other person. I'm asking what the magic wand is, because if you're working with a couple, if you're working with teens, if you're working with peers, what do they want to see happen? Do they want that person to be part of their life? Do they not want that person to be part of their lives? It gives you a trailhead on how you're going to intervene. And then I will ask the individual or each one of the couple, do they have a word for spiritual? And what I'm looking for is, what do they use? I'm not invested in religion or whether they believe in God, but I want a word that they use. Because when I describe higher self, if they believe in God, I will say, where is God? And they will say everywhere. And I will say everywhere. And they will finally say it's also in them. And that's how I describe self. So after a very brief interview that's very strategic, very compassionate, when they start to go off on a story, I gently bring them back, let them know we'll have more time. And then if I'm working with an individual, I'll go into my blurb. If I'm working with a couple, I'll put them back together and I'll give the blurb to both of them. And in the certification, I give you the script, I give you the handout. So if any of this is resonating, then please find time for a chat with me. And if you're listening to the replay, please find time, because in 15 minutes, whether you're interested in the certification or not, I'd still like to help you from where you are now to whatever intervention that I can offer you to make a difference personally or professionally. So here's the blurb. I say, thank you for sharing what you did with me. I want to tell you how I work. I believe we all have a healthy self, capital S self. And when we're in self, we're calm, clear, and compassionate. You know those moments? Because they're usually just moments. We're not always in self. We're in parts that we exile, parts that we manage with, parts that we get extreme with. Those exiles are the parts we learned in childhood weren't going to get our needs met. So if we felt sad or scared or hurt or vulnerable, we didn't want to feel that way, and we pushed it aside. Some of us pushed aside our anger too, because it wasn't safe to be angry. But these are the exiles we don't want to deal with. So instead we manage, and we go out in the world and we learn how to be nice, pleasing, caretaking. Some people are hardworking, some people are judgmental, but too often we put on what I call a pseudo self. where you look like you're in self, but you're really not. You're really masking those exiles and trying to keep them at bay. And if you can't keep those vulnerable feelings at bay and you can't manage them anymore, people do extreme behaviors. They yell, they get panicked, they eat too much, drink too much, they get enraged, they get depressed, they go shopping, they get addicted to drugs and alcohol. The extreme behaviors numb you. They serve a purpose, they're reactive. So what I help people do is realize that all your parts are trying to be helpful. My job is to help you get to self. So I ask them if they understand that, and they get a working awareness that there is a different perspective. Then I will take what they told me. So I will say, Mary, you said that when you were younger, you were the baby and nobody paid you any attention. So you managed by working so hard to get attention and be codependent. And when John isn't giving you the attention you need, you either start withholding or you get passive aggressive or you go eat too much. Does that sound right? And then if I'm working with John, I say, John, you came from a family where your father might have been abusive and you learned not to talk about your feelings, right? And you learned how to be a good worker and a good husband and a good father. But when your wife wants more, you start hiding. You work too much, or you are on your phone too much, or you just tune her out, right? So then I will check back with the individual or couple to see if I'm tracking by what we already talked about in the initial interview. I make sure that they have with them a knowledge that there is a higher self. And as I'm talking about the fact that they're withholding or sarcastic or judgmental or reactive, I ask them what's happening to their body. And often what's happening to their body is that they're getting tense, right? Take a deep breath with me here. And that's what I ask them to do. I ask them to take a deep belly breath because I tell them that they already have a higher self. And when their parts get activated, they get tense, their body tenses. And sometimes just taking a breath brings in more of that higher self, that calm, compassionate, witnessing energy. Then I tell them I'm going to do a brief meditation to help them get to self. And what I do is have them breathe, have them center, have them reach up to the sky and bring down compassion for every part of themselves. And then imagine walking to the base of a mountain where all of their parts separate, and then go up in self as high up the mountain as possible. And ask any part that isn't peace just to wait. So they get a felt sense of what it's like when your parts aren't jabbering at you. Then I invite them as much as they can to picture the person with whom they're having conflict at the top of their mountain without all of their parts attached. And as much as they can, send compassion in their direction. And then I pause for a moment. And then I let them know that they're going to come back down the mountain to collect their parts, even if there's a part that doesn't want to. Because once they give their own parts the attention they need to unburden the pain from the past, they carry their own wisdom in life. So taking back your parts ever so gently, come back down the mountain, back down the path, back through the doorway, and back to your room. So take a deep breath with me here. Because that's what I do in a session. In 45 minutes, that's the expertise I have to know how to intervene moving forward. I have handouts and templates and videos and scripts for all of this, including the miracle of empathy, which I teach them. I give them a handout for empathy on how to speak for the parts that they've exiled, for their sadness, their hurt, their fear. An I you message, not you neglect me, you judge me. An I message, I am sad when. And then I teach them how to listen to their other party in terms of what they need. So when we're talking about empathy and the handout that I have on empathy, we want the person who's looking for empathy to talk about their exile, to talk about their fear, their sadness, their hurt, not their judgments. I feel neglected makes the other party a perpetrator. If they believe they're neglected, they feel sad. So I messages talk about your feelings. Then you learn how to listen, where you can truly give someone the benefit of understanding where they are sad, hurt, and scared, sometimes angry, where you can let them know you understand them. Because most times when we know we've hurt someone, it's like, okay, I'm sorry. And it feels patronizing and it feels facile and they don't believe it. So hearing what they're saying, letting them know you understand by repeating the words, and then making amends. I'm sorry for something I did or didn't do, or sometimes I'm just sorry existentially that you feel that way. I don't want you to feel that way. I want to learn a new way to communicate, and I'm sorry. And then we invite them to be grateful if they can for whatever empathy you're showing and create a new dynamic moving forward. I'm going to recap what we've talked about. You're on this call because you want to become a go-to relationship expert. A go-to relationship expert to your children, to your parents, to your partners in your workplace. If you're working with teens, if you're working with other mediators and therapists, you can be more of an expert than you already are. I have 35 years of experience, and I found that because thousands of people have come to see me, that I was doing the same interview each time, the same questions, the same explanation, the same meditation, and the same experience was to see somebody shift from the story that they came in with, where they were the victim looking for validation, to being a more heroic actor in their own life, where they can make a choice about how to respond. And you give them the tools for that. You give them the training on how to be more in self, let go of their limiting beliefs by healing the pain from the past and relating from their heart. You can give them an empathy handout where I actually take people, even if they both come in for mediation, they're both done with the relationship. They don't want any of this woo-woo stuff. They just want to find out the facts. They still get the same introduction. Because I tell them working out the details of a separation or a divorce aren't as difficult as helping you get to self. If they're not in self, they're just going to be reactive. I'm just going to be refereeing. And if you ever work with people in conflict, sometimes you feel like a human liver, where you are just kind of translating what they're saying through you, and it's very exhausting. But if you give them this skill set and let them know that up until now, they've done the best they know how to do, but they can do better, and you're going to help them do better because you're going to give them this information that I give you in the certification. So we talked about the fact that people come, sometimes they know what they want, sometimes they don't. Asking them the magic wand question helps them focus on what they do want instead of complaining about what they don't want, because more often they'll come and they'll tell you their story and what the problems are and how they feel like a victim, but help them set their GPS for what they do want, because you're going to help them get there. I ask them what their word for spiritual is, because I want them to recognize that they have done the best they've known how to do, considering their level of awareness at the time, considering their family of origin, considering their experiences up till now. But they do have this healthy self, capital S self, that's calm, clear, compassionate, curious, connected, creative. Let them know that they do have the ability to make a different choice. And I mentioned my spiritual graft earlier, so I'm going to give you that detail, because I realize that much of our wounds in our lives are caused by our ego, our need to be right, our need to have it our way, our expectations being dashed. Someone, not me, said expectations are premeditated resentments. So we have to let those go. I realized that we could put a spiritual graft, G-R-A-F-T, on our ego's wounds. And here's the graft. Ready? G, gratitude. Gratitude for what is. R-A, radical acceptance. I used to think it was unconditional love, but it's really radical acceptance. You just stick with what is. F, forgiveness of yourself, of them. T, trust. Trust the process. Trust your higher self. Trust in you if you're their therapist. So gratitude, radical acceptance, forgiveness, and trust, put it on any wound right now, and it will make a difference. So with the magic wand, with the spiritual word, with the interview questions, with the meditation, you can increase your expertise, hopefully just by what I've offered. But if there's more you'd like to learn, I would love to talk with you. Go to lindakroll.com/certify or lindakroll.com/roadmap and get my roadmap of this process. For those of you listening to the replay, I'm glad you're listening to the replay. You can reach out to me. It starts soon. It's always a small group, because what I do is I work with the people that show up in the group for where you are, for where you want to be. The whole training is around the people that show up to give you what I have, to see how I can help you integrate it into what you're doing. So it's not just a training that just gives you all of my materials, take it or leave it. It's let's use my materials as a basis, the manuals, the handouts, the templates, the scripts, so people can give workshops, people can build on this. So it's a very personalized experience. If you are a coach, a therapist, there are continuing education credits for my course because they've been approved by the National Board of Certified Counselors and the International Coach Federation. And the other piece that's so great about these groups is that everybody does their own work in it. They do their own healing, because when I do the examples every week, we meet every other week for 2 hours. And then in between time, you work with other people in the group. The experience allows you to bring your own issues. So you get the benefit of being the therapist coach or being the recipient of these tools. I'd love to have you join me. For those of you listening to the replay, if you've made it this far, thank you very much. And please contact me, lindakroll.com/certify or lindakroll.com/roadmap to get the roadmap of the process, or lindakroll.com/cease, and you'll get the guided meditation that I do with my clients, and you'll get the relationship assessment that I also offer people. Thank you so much for being here.